Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Leadership Coaching Podcast with Joel Smith and Joe Baker. We're here to help you develop your superpowers. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com.
This is a Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith. My co-host Joe Baker is over there. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, doing good.
Yeah. Hey, you and your son Sam have something big coming up. You guys are going to rock the world here, literally rock the world here in another week or so, right?
Yeah, we've been training every day for months. And last week I gave Sam a bit of a competition and he did 450 pull-ups in one day. And so,
oh, wow.
More than I've ever done in one day.
Wow. So if you're out there and you've had your head in the sand and you haven't been watching any of the news outlets and know what's going on with Joe, or if you haven't listened to our podcast much, Joe and his son Sam, and by the way, Sam's middle name is Sam Adventure. Sam is 7 years old and he's doing some incredible things climbing, and Joe has been his coach and his mentor and his most of all his best dad. And so the story is incredible. You got to go out to Sam Adventure and check out they've got some great video coverage out there. And but this venture that you guys are going into here in a couple weeks, this is a little bit bigger, isn't it?
Yep, we just keep taking it up a notch. We're actually we're gonna climb a wall called the Middle Cathedral, which is right across from El Capitan. It's a grade 5 wall. It's huge, and we're gonna live on it for 3 days, working our way up this wall. And the biggest fear of this thing is actually the heat. It looks like it could be as much as 100 degrees out or more, and it feels like you're cooking up there. And it just means we have to carry a tremendous amount of water up a wall, which hauling up a wall is one of the most difficult parts of the whole journey.
Wow, I can't imagine the training that you guys have had to do just to have the perseverance and just the strength to be able to kind of fight your mind and overcome these elements. I don't like to mow the grass in 100-degree weather.
Well, the way I do it is I have this little book and I give Sam an amount of points for which climbs he does, and climbing, it has different grades. So like a 5.6 is much easier than like 5.10. And so I give Sam different points for different grades. So I think at 5.8, he gets 1 point, 5.9, he gets 2 points, 5.10, he gets 3 points, and then 5.11, he gets 5 points. And those are the different grades of difficulty at the rock gym. And I just keep track of him every time with this little notepad. Every climb he does, I put little hash marks. And at first he had to get 30 points every time we went. And then it was 40 points, then it was 50 points. And now we're at like 60 to 70 points and he gets it. And really it was a good experience, like just keeping that scoreboard, and you could actually watch his transition and like just how much he was growing and changing and becoming a better climber. Like you'd see it on paper, his progress.
Yeah.
And so really it's like when you ask me like, well, what gets Sam up these big walls? Well, it's 30 points a day, 40 points a day. It's that consistent commitment on the way to the gym to say, how many points are we going to get today, Dad? Here's the amount. And then as a father, I build these little incentive pieces, these little tiny incentive bites of like, hey, when you get to this many points, I've got a treat for you. Or when you get to this many points, like we got something extra. And but you have to at least get to your commitment. And so like constantly pushing that is what gets a kid up a wall.
Yeah. And in our lives and in our workplaces, typically that type of incentive-based motivation tends to be missing. There's a lot of people that go to work every day and they're not really shooting for any kind of points. They're not really shooting for anything. They're going in and they're putting in their time. And so I think what you're talking about, Joe, we're kind of stumbling upon maybe one of the major keys to leadership, to development, motivation, to accomplishing great things. And you're doing it with a 7-year-old. I can only imagine, these habits that you're building into Sam, what they're going to turn out to be when he's 25.
Yeah. When there's certain things that we need or want, like those are the things that really turn us on. They it's like if it's something we need to survive, then we're gonna do whatever it takes to get it. If it's something that we really, really want, we're gonna do what it takes to get it. And so we have to create an environment where we have those rewards and we have this feeling of like necessity to get things done, or else we don't accomplish big things.
Yeah, and of course, those daily rewards or the scorecards or the real time measures that we've talked about before, that you're talking about. Those are the benchmarks. Those are the things that we need to take tiny steps every day to keep growing and growing. But then the other aspect to that too is we really need a big vision as well. I mean, you're not going to just keep taking good baby steps every day and keep working for those points if there's not something at the end of the rainbow that you're shooting for. And so I know you guys have been hyping this climb, and I know you've got some other climbs down the road that you want to accomplish as well. But I'm sure Sam thinks about that, because you've told me that he tells people in the grocery store or wherever he's at, hey, I'm going to climb, whatever. So it's on his mind. He's got this vision, and it's not something that he's not doing it today or tomorrow or the next day. He's doing it down the road on a certain date. But it's that big vision that keeps him working on it today and tomorrow and the next day.
That's another really good lesson too, is that constantly visualizing accomplishing that goal is part of it too. Because when you've thought about it so deeply for so long, and then you're on it and it's so horrible and terrible and hot and miserable that you want to quit, it's like, it's all of that other strength of visualizing it and the power of your brain that helps you overcome that when you really have seen it and you can see what you're going to accomplish. And I tell Sam after each climb, I said, I'm going to get you a bigger and bigger ice cream cone. And the last ice cream cone was like literally like 2 feet tall. I mean, it's this huge ice. I mean, like it was on a double. We put 2 waffle cones together and just stacked it. And I gave the people at the ice cream shop a $30 tip to make it how I wanted it.
Oh man.
And he knows that that's coming at the end of this, a big ice cream cone, a big celebration. And he's visualizing that, and he knows that it's worth it to do it. And because when you get on the wall, it's really hard. It's really hot. There's a lot of parts that are not fun.
Well, and another big part of this thing too, I think that, you and I have talked about, and you've talked about, this aspect of the training. But when it comes to training, you can't just paint things as all roses and smiley faces. You've got to paint this, whatever it is that you're heading into, you've got to paint it real. You've got to know exactly what you're going to get into, and you have to know that there's going to be suffering. You have to know that there's going to be some hard times, and you have to actually accept it and grab a hold of that and know that it's going to come and we're going to get through it anyway. Because if you fool yourself and you make it seem easier than what it really is, which that's what human beings, that's what we do. We always try to look at the bright side of things. Maybe this isn't going to be so bad. It'll be a lot better. It'll be okay. Well, no, it's really going to suck and it's going to be hard, but we're still going to do it anyway, right?
Yep. And we talk about that. We talk about that every time we talk about the climbs, how hard it's going to be, and that there's going to be these moments that are going to be really awesome, and the rest is going to be really hard. And then we also are constantly training to make it better and better and better. When you're on a wall, there's this illusion that the ground gets farther and farther away, but the top never seems to get any closer. And it really is, you gain a whole new reality on the wall where it's like you're now hanging from anchors everywhere. We even bring up our own, what we call porta ledges, which are like little cots that we hang from anchors, and so we could sleep on at the night. So like hanging tents almost. And we've like hanging stoves, and everything has to hang from anchors. But when you're on the wall, and the ground gets farther away, very far away, but the top never gets any closer. The only way that you can emotionally continue to move forward is if you break it into bites. And so you have to break it into, okay, I don't really need to get to the top of this wall today. I just need to get to that next pitch in the next hour or 2 hours. I just need to get the whole team and our gear to there. And we just kind of keep breaking it into these bites and kind of keeping a tally of where we're at on, in our progress. But that's the only way. And so like you have to have like these miniature little goals.
Yeah, little benchmarks. Yeah. Yeah, we call those benchmarks in our company when we do our leadership training. We call those benchmarks, and it's so important because if you just start with the finish line and you try to focus on everything that you have to do, now go do it. You can't do, you can't run 10 miles in a moment. And so you can't climb a mountain in a day. So you've got to break it down. And what you're saying is, man, you're not only breaking it down into days, but you're breaking it down into distances and tasks that need to be completed and certain benchmarks and finish lines every day that get you those small little victories that keep you charged.
Yeah. So like you gotta break it into like 20 incremental steps or 30 incremental steps and then celebrate those as you accomplish them together. And so oftentimes like on each pitch I'll have some kind of like, I stash a bunch of candy in my backpack in my pocket that I don't tell Sam about. And it's like, and like suddenly it's like, we got to this pitch, I got something for you, and it's this constant like reward cycle and celebration cycle, and that builds that momentum as we get closer and closer to the top. Because you will always quit if you're just looking at the top and you can't comprehend yourself doing it.
Yeah, I think about what the Bible says about hope being deferred. When you do work and you're not rewarded for it, you work really hard and you don't see any results for it. And maybe it's not because there won't be results, but maybe they're just too far down the line that we don't pay attention to it as well. So having those little benchmarks along the way, and if you're trying to accomplish something yourself in your business or your personal health or whatever it is, I think it's important to take time to stop and celebrate the small victories. I don't think we're very good at that by nature as human beings. I think it's a lot easier to look down or I guess in this case to look up and see how much further we still have to go instead of to celebrate where we've come. Wouldn't you agree with that? That's probably a constant challenge for you guys as mountain climbers.
Yeah, it totally is. You've got to constantly just keep breaking it into bites and keep working on that next little piece. That's what gets people up the wall. And then the other aspect in rock climbing, typically, it's done with two people, where there's a leader that leads up the pitch and then the follower comes up next. Or if there's three people, a leader leads the pitch, then another person comes up, then another person comes up. We discovered that when you're developing a child, like a 7-year-old, to do climbing, the most important thing is his emotional state of being. And so we rig everything. So me and Sam climb literally side by side. So I'm always within, 3 to 5 feet of him, whether it's to the right or to the left or right below him, or right above him. Like I'm always kind of changing these different spots so I can help him, guide him, and point things out. But my role there is to constantly just encourage Sam, keep his spirit up, keep him just having the right conversations with me. And honestly, it's an awesome thing as a father, but really it's a good lesson in coaching. It's like that if you're going to do something really scary, really big, really hard, you need to have that coach who's kind of like jogging there with you, holding you in the right emotional state, kind of like helping you overcome each obstacle. You don't want someone who's like 100 feet up there and you're like shouting over the wind, that you're struggling with something.
Right. That's a great thought. And I can see how that plays out in the home as far as, parenting, and it plays out certainly in the workplace as well. People, in the workplace, there's always going to be time, and in families, there's always going to be a time when we have to point out some things that need to change with kids or employees or the business or whatever it is. And if there's not trust built up, those suggestions, those maybe we'll call them criticisms, will be taken as criticisms, and they'll be, they'll bring up defense, mechanisms and walls that'll, but if you can develop that trust first, and when your employee or your workmates or your son really trusts you, and they know that you have their best interests in mind, and you've got their back, and you're all about their best interest, well, then their ears open up, and they're willing to hear the things that you have to say, because they trust that you have the right motives. If you don't have trust in place first, then any criticism, kind of by default, we think it's because it's to serve them instead of to serve us. But when you have that trust in place, and I think your whole climbing example here is just it's a great metaphor for life. You're giving him that trust, and you making him the center. And it's obvious when you watch the documentaries where Sam just adores being with you, and he's willing to work that hard because he really gets something out of it. He loves hanging with you. He loves hearing you give him props and telling him how proud he is, or how proud you are of him. And just it's amazing how he's motivated to do that. And you've just illustrated the number one, at least what I think, the number one foundation to any kind of leadership. It's just where trust and that comes in. So I want to commend you on that. By the way, if anybody's listening and you have not gone out to Sam Adventure and checked out the documentaries and some of the videos that he's got out there, it's really awesome. But when you do it, don't just go out there and look at it as kind of a sport, rock climbing. Look at it for the lessons that are in this whole story, because this is a great story. And it's not just Joe's story. It's not just Joe and Sam's story. This is a story that's much, much bigger than that, because we all have a father. We all have a father that loves us and encourages us, and he does not want us to stay at the bottom of the mountain. He wants us to climb the mountains, and he wants us to accomplish great things, and to help other people accomplish great things. So, hey, Joe, I want to commend you. This has been great. Any last thoughts on next week or your next adventure? Because we may not hear from you again until afterwards. We'll have to have Sam on.
It'll be 10 days I'm gone in Yosemite, and it's going to be a big endeavor. We've been in conversation with some pretty heavyweight media producers, and because they're thinking about buying out the whole series of films we're making, and they're like, Joe, just tell us, like, what do you think is like the worst things that can go wrong? And like they're trying to like think of the script and building tension and all that. And I gave them a bunch of things, but then I was like, but really, I'm not scared of any of those things. You want to know what I'm really scared about? And I said, yeah. What are you really scared of? And I'm like, I'm scared I'll push Sam a little too hard. I'm scared that, he'll grow up and feel like I just pushed him up a couple walls, and he thinks I'm a loser, Yeah. And they're like, really? Well, tell us more about that. And it's like, and so a big piece of this too is having that right amount of tension where, at the end of the day, it's really has to be Sam's vision. It has to be Sam's thing. And even though I'm the coach working on Sam, working him up the wall, encouraging him, creating an incentive for him, there's a time when we might have to turn back. And I hope, and my fear is that I won't turn back when I need to. And my hope is that I will turn back when we need to. And so above everything else, I think that's, I really, at the end of the day, I want Sam to have that deep inner confidence. And I want him to also, be loved by his dad and not anything else. And so,
yeah, you don't want him doing it just to please you. You want him to do it because he's driven. Yeah. Oh, I can definitely see that as a challenge. So, well, hey, we would love to hear comments. Tell us what you think about this. Give us some reviews. Check us out at superherosidekick.com. You can contact Joe at superherosidekick.com, or myself at Joel, just with an L, at superherosidekick.com. We would love to speak with you. We'd love to talk to you about coaching opportunities, and be sure you check in though too with the Facebook page. And I'm sure Joe will be giving some updates here and there about what's going on with his climb. So pay attention. So hey, we'd love to hear from you. We'll see you later. See you later on the next episode.
All right, catch you later.